Imagine an 18-year-old boy named Kavi, sitting alone in a dim room. 7 alarms have already rung. He turns them off, one by one, without getting up. Morning sunlight slips through the curtain, touching a messy floor, scattered notebooks, unfinished tasks, and forgotten promises. And here's a question. Why do some people transform their lives, while others stay stuck for years? A lack of discipline doesn't destroy your life in a single moment. It destroys it quietly, minute by minute. Today, you'll discover the science behind why your brain resists discipline, the story of how Kavi rebuilt his life, and a simple 3-step framework to discipline your own life. Before we go deeper, which part of your life is quietly falling apart because discipline hasn't arrived yet? Kavi wasn't lazy or incapable. He was simply overwhelmed by a life with no structure. He woke up latte, rushed through his days, chased motivation, and lost it minutes later. One afternoon, after missing yet another assignment, his teacher placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Your problem isn't ability. Your problem is the absence of a system." That evening, he met Mr. Ramon, a man who seemed calm, steady, and intentional. Ramon looked at Kavi and asked a simple question. When you wake up, who decides your day, you or your impulses? Ramon then drew a circle on a piece of paper, calling it the chaos loop. Inside, he wrote 5 stages that fed into one another. First, there is no structure, which leads to the second stage. No clarity. When you have no clarity, you develop low confidence, which is the 3rd stage. This low confidence pushes you into the 4th stage, avoidance. You start avoiding difficult tasks, important conversations, and personal goals. And finally, avoidance creates the 5th stage, more chaos. This cycle repeats, trapping you. Our brain avoids anything difficult, Ramon explained gently. It's wired for survival, not for long-term growth. It seeks comfort and familiarity. That's why discipline feels impossible at first. You are fighting against your own biology. He handed Kavi a blank notebook. Tomorrow, we begin rebuilding your life, one tiny habit at a time. The next morning, Kavi arrived early, feeling a flicker of hope. Ramon was already there, and on a fresh page. He wrote 3 words that would become the foundation of Kavi's new life: awareness, alignment, and action ritual. First, they focused on awareness. Ramon asked Kavi to simply observe and identify what steals his time without judgment. The list was long. Endless scrolling on his phone, long afternoon naps that left him groggy, the general chaos of his room, and studying only when panic set in the night before a deadline. Next came alignment. Ramon asked, "What do you want your life to look like? Forget the big, grand goals for a moment. How do you want to feel at the end of the day?" After a long pause, Kavi said softly, "I want to be proud of myself." A warm smile appeared on Ramon's face. "That is enough," he replied. "That is our North Star." Finally, they designed the action ritual. It wasn't a demanding, military-style schedule. It was a series of tiny, almost laughably small commitments. A 10-minute study session, a 2-minute cleaning of his desk, a 1-minute breathing exercise to calm his mind, and a single line of reflection in his notebook before bed. Ramon's philosophy was clear. Small actions repeated daily become identity. Kavi followed the rituals. Some days were easy, filled with a new sense of purpose. Other days felt heavy, and the pull of old habits was strong. But he returned every time, marking each small victory in his notebook. He was learning that discipline wasn't about perfection. It was about returning. Then came the challenge he had avoided for months. His vocational exam. It was the one thing that stood between him and the future he claimed to want. During the 3 weeks of preparation, Kavi faced 3 ancient enemies that live within us all. The first was distraction, a constant siren call from his phone, from the window, from his own thoughts. The second was fatigue, a deep weariness in his bones that made him question if he could continue. The third, and most powerful, was self-doubt. The quiet whisper that told him he was just the same old Kavi, that he would inevitably fail. He confessed his struggle to Ramon, admitting he felt exhausted. "Fatigue is not failure," Ramon told him calmly. It is a signal from your body. Rest, then return. Returning is what makes you disciplined. 2 days before the exam, Kavi opened his notebook. Page after page was filled with his effort, his struggles, his small wins. It was tangible proof that he had shown up, day after day, for himself. On the morning of the exam, he woke before the alarm. He didn't feel anxious or rushed. He felt calm, steady, present. He didn't know if he would pass, but for the first time, he knew he had finally shown up for his life. 2 weeks later, the result arrived. Kavi had passed not perfectly, but honestly, it wasn't the score that mattered. It was the quiet warmth blooming inside his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced before. Ramon met with him one last time. You see, discipline doesn't change your results first, he said, his eyes filled with kindness. It changes your identity first. The results are just a byproduct of who you have become. Kavi looked at his hands, no longer the hands of a boy lost in chaos, but of a young man who kept his promises to himself. He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. I'm not who I used to be. Before we end, let me ask you gently. Which small action can you commit to today that your future self will thank you for? If you want a calm, simple, deeply human path to build discipline and inner strength, join me in the next video. I'll see you there.